Fragments of Papius. Chapter 1. The writings of Papius in common circulation are 5 in number, and these are called an exposition of the oracles of the Lord. Irenaeus makes mention of these as the only works written by him in the following words, quote, "Now testimony is borne to these things in writing by Papius, an ancient man, who was a hearer of John and friend of Polycarp, in the 4th of his books, for 5 books were composed by him." Unquote. Thus wrote Irenaeus. Moreover, Papius himself, in the introduction to his books, makes it manifest that he was not himself a hearer and eyewitness of the holy apostles, but tells us that he received the truths of our religion from those who were acquainted with them in the following words. "But I shall not be unwilling to put down, along with my interpretations, whatsoever instructions I received with care at any time from the elders, and stored up with care in my memory, assuring you at the same time of their truth. For I did not, like the multitude, take pleasure in those who spoke much, but in those who taught the truth, nor in those who related strange commandments, but in those who rehearsed the commandments given by the Lord to faith, and proceeding from truth itself. If then any one who had attended on the elders came, I asked minutely after their sayings, what Andrew or Peter said, or what was said by Philip, or by Thomas, or by James, or by John, or by Matthew, or by any other of the Lord's disciples, which things Aristion and the presbyter John, the disciples of the Lord, say. For I imagined that what was to be got from books was not so profitable to me as what came from the living and abiding voice." Fragment 2. The early Christians called those who practiced a godly guilelessness children, as is stated by Papius in the first book of the Lord's Expositions and by Clemens Alexandrinus in his Pedagogue. Fragment 3. Judas walked about in this world a sad example of impiety, for his body having swollen to such an extent that he could not pass where a chariot could pass easily, he was crushed by the chariot, so that his bowels gushed out. Fragment 4. As the elders who saw John the disciple of the Lord remembered that they had heard from him how the Lord taught in regard to those times, and said, "The days will come in which vines shall grow, having each 10,000 branches, and in each branch 10,000 twigs, and in each true twig 10,000 shoots, and in every one of the shoots 10,000 clusters, and on every one of the clusters 10,000 grapes. And every grape when pressed will give 25 metrites of wine. And when any one of the saints shall lay hold of a cluster, another shall cry out, I am a better cluster, take me, bless the Lord through me. In like manner, he said, that a grain of wheat could produce 10,000 ears, and that every year would have 10,000 grains, and every grain would yield 10 pounds of clear, pure, fine flour, and that apples, and seeds, and grass would produce in similar proportions, and that all animals, feeding then only on the productions of the earth, would become peaceable and harmonious, and be in perfect subjection to man. Testimony is borne to these things in writing by Papius, an ancient man, who was a hearer of John and friend of Polycarp in the 4th of his books. For 5 books were composed by him, and he added, saying, quote, "Now these things are credible to believers, and Judas the traitor," says he, "not believing and asking, how shall such growths be accomplished by the Lord? The Lord said, they shall see who come to them. These, then, are the times mentioned by the prophet Isaiah, and the wolf shall lie down with the lamb, etc." Unquote. Fragment 5. As the presbyters say, then those who are deemed worthy of an abode in heaven shall go there. Others shall enjoy the delights of paradise, and others shall possess the splendor of the city. For everywhere the Savior will be seen, according as they shall be worthy who see him. But that there is this distinction between the habitation of those who produce 100-fold, and that those who produce 60-fold, and that those who produce 30-fold. For the first will be taken up into the heavens, the second class will dwell in paradise, and the last will inhabit the city. And that on this account the Lord said, In my Father's house are many mansions, for all things belong to God, who supplies all with a suitable dwelling place, even as his word says, that a share is given to all by the Father, according as each one is or shall be worthy. And this is the couch in which they shall recline who feast, being invited to the wedding. The presbyters, the disciples of the apostles, say that this is the gradation and arrangement of those who were saved, and that they advance through steps of this nature, and that, moreover, they ascend through the Spirit to the Son, and through the Son to the Father, and that in due time the Son will yield up his work to the Father, even as it is said by the apostle, quote, "For he must reign until he hath put all his enemies under his feet. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death." Unquote. "For in the times of the kingdom the just man who is on the earth shall forget to die." Quote, "But when he saith all things are put under him, it is manifest that he is accepted which did put all things under him. And when all things shall be subdued by him, then shall the Son also himself be subject unto him that put all things under him, that God may be all in all." Unquote. Fragment 6. Papius, who is now mentioned by us, affirms that he received the sayings of the apostles from those who accompanied them, and he moreover asserts that he heard in person Aristion and the presbyter John. Accordingly, he mentions them frequently by name, and in his writings gives their traditions. Our notice of these circumstances may not be without its use. It may also be worthwhile to add to the statements of Papius already given other passages of his in which he relates some miraculous deeds, stating that he acquired the knowledge of them from tradition. The residence of the apostle Philip with his daughters in Hierapolis has been mentioned above. We must now point out how Papius, who lived at the same time, relates that he had received a wonderful narrative from the daughters of Philip, for he relates that a dead man was raised to life in his day. He also mentions another miracle relating to Justus, surnamed Barsabbas, how he swallowed a deadly poison and received no harm on account of the grace of the Lord. The same person, moreover, has set down other things as coming to him from unwritten tradition, amongst these some strange parables and instructions of the Savior, and some other things of a more fabulous nature. Amongst these, he says that there will be a millennium after the resurrection from the dead, when the personal reign of Christ will be established on this earth. He moreover hands down in his own writing other narratives given by the previously mentioned Aristion of the Lord's sayings, and the traditions of the presbyter John. For information on these points, we can merely refer our readers to these books themselves. But now, to the extracts already made, we shall add, as being a matter of primary importance, a tradition regarding Mark, who wrote the Gospel, which he, Papius, has given in the following words. "And the presbyter said this, Mark, having become the interpreter of Peter, wrote down accurately whatsoever he remembered. It was not, however, in exact order that he related the sayings or deeds of Christ, for he neither heard the Lord nor accompanied him. But afterwards, as I said, he accompanied Peter, who accommodated his instructions to the necessities of his hearers, but with no intention of giving a regular narrative of the Lord's sayings. Wherefore Mark made no mistake in thus writing some things as he remembered them. For of one thing he took special care, not to omit anything he had heard, and not to put anything fictitious into the statements. This is what is related by Papius regarding Mark. But with regard to Matthew, he has made the following statements. Matthew put together the oracles of the Lord in the Hebrew language, and each one interpreted them as best as he could. The same person uses proofs from the first epistle of John, and from the epistle of Peter in like manner. And he also gives another story of a woman who was accused of many sins before the Lord, which is to be found in the Gospel according to the Hebrews. Fragment 7. Papius thus speaks, word for word. To some of them, angels, he gave dominion over the arrangement of the world, and he commissioned them to exercise their dominion well. And he says, immediately after this, but it happened that their arrangement came to nothing. Fragment 8. With regard to the inspiration of the book Revelation, we deem it superfluous to add another word. For the blessed Gregory Theologus and Cyril, and even men of still older date, Papias, Irenaeus, Methodius, and Hippolytus, bore entirely satisfactory testimony to it. Fragment 9. Taking occasion from Papias of Hierapolis, the illustrious, a disciple of the apostle who leaned on the bosom of Christ, and Clemens, and Pantanius, the priest of the church of the Alexandrians, and the wise Ammonius, the ancient and first expositors, who agreed with each other, who understood the work of the 6 days as referring to Christ and the whole church. Fragment 10. 1. Mary, the mother of the Lord. 2. Mary, the wife of Cleophas or Alphaeus, who was the mother of James the bishop and apostle, and of Simon and Thaddeus, and of one Joseph. 3. Mary Salome, the wife of Zebedee, the mother of John the Evangelist and James. 4. Mary Magdalene. These 4 are found in the Gospel. James and Judas and Joseph were sons of an aunt. 2. Of the Lord's. James also and John were sons of another aunt. 3. Of the Lord's. Mary, 2, mother of James the Less and Joseph, wife of Alphaeus, was the sister of Mary, the mother of the Lord, whom John names of Cleophas, either from her father or from the family of the clan, or for some other reason. Mary Salome, 3, is called Salome either from her husband or her village. Some affirm that she is the same as Mary of Cleophas, because she has 2 husbands.